For the first time ever, Prince William and Princess Catherine appeared in public as if they were already king and queen, and the reaction was instant. Crowds at Windsor Castle erupted in royal blessings, calling them the true monarchs. There was no ceremony, no crown, just presence, and across the ocean, Meghan and Harry were watching. Sources say they were stunned, even shaken, as the world embraced a new royal future without them at the center. This changes everything. The moment Britain witnessed William and Catherine as king and queen for the first time. Gasps filled the air at Windsor Castle as Prince William and Princess Catherine stepped forward, not as heirs, but as something far more powerful. There was no announcement, no golden carriage, no royal decree, but in that quiet, unscripted moment, witnessed by the crowd and captured by a dozen lenses, the future became the present. It was a crisp morning. A royal engagement had been expected, but not this. The gates of Windsor slowly opened, and out stepped William and Catherine, unaccompanied by King Charles or Queen Camilla. No entourage shielding them. Just the two of them, walking with a calm that didn't demand attention. It drew it. William's stride was firm, his posture tall, his hand resting near Catherine's shoulder as they advanced. His expression wasn't nervous, it was ready. Beside him, Catherine was equally composed. Her hands were folded gracefully, chin lifted, her eyes warm but unwavering. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. This wasn't performance. It was transition. These weren't gestures of support. They weren't posing for cameras. What the public saw was leadership in motion, felt deeply and instinctively. The crowd, initially hushed with uncertainty, seemed to understand all at once. Phones lifted. Eyes welled. The message was clear. This wasn't symbolic. This was it. From the crowd, one man's voice rose above the murmurs. God bless the king and queen. It landed like a spark, igniting murmurs into a chorus. Others followed without hesitation. Long live the king. God bless them both. It wasn't coordinated. It wasn't prearranged. It came from a place deeper than protocol. The people were crowning them with their voices. That phrase, once reserved for Charles and Camilla, now found new life in William and Catherine. And it wasn't said with rebellion. It was said with relief, with faith. As if the public had been waiting, silently, for this moment to arrive. What made the scene unforgettable were the small human things. William's brief but telling glance toward Catherine, an unspoken check of reassurance. Catherine's subtle nod to the royal guard standing at the gate. The way both paused at the archway, just briefly, to look out over the people. Not to wave, but to see them. One palace aide reportedly whispered to a colleague, "This wasn't staged. It was earned." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in Montecito, the reaction was immediate and tense. A source close to Meghan Markle and Prince Harry confirmed that Harry had watched the broadcast in real time. He said nothing during the footage. When it ended, he stood up and left the room in silence. Meghan, reportedly, remained frozen on the sofa, her eyes fixed on the screen long after it had gone dark. An aide later shared, "She was visibly disturbed, not angry, shaken. She knew what this moment meant." It wasn't just that Catherine had stepped into the spotlight. It was that the public had welcomed her into it without hesitation. They never officially received the title, a source close to the Sussexes told the British press, and yet, here they are, adored and central. That sentiment echoed across the UK and beyond, not because a ceremony had been held, but because the people had recognized the moment before the institution did. In a monarchy built on tradition and hierarchy, this was something different. A spontaneous recognition, a people-led shift. Not by vote, not by bloodline, but by presence. And it all started with a walk at Windsor. Jealousy. From afar, Meghan and Harry watched the power shift from across the Atlantic. In Montecito, California, Meghan and Harry didn't need a royal statement to feel the shift. The images of Windsor spoke louder than words. The couple, once central to royal conversations, now watched from the outside. Prince Harry, insiders say, was silent as he watched the broadcast of William and Catherine's public appearance. When the crowd erupted with cheers for the King and Queen, Harry stood, turned off the screen, and left the room. One aide described it simply. He didn't speak, just walked away. Meghan Markle maintained her public silence, but privately, reports describe her as deeply unsettled. She knew it was unofficial, a Sussex insider said, but it didn't matter. Catherine was being treated like the Queen, and Meghan could feel the narrative slipping away. While Meghan was developing plans to revive her podcast brand in the US, Catherine was co-chairing global forums and being applauded for her diplomatic poise. The comparison didn't need to be made. It was already in motion. What hit hardest was the palace's exclusion of Harry and Meghan from newly formed advisory groups related to succession, climate diplomacy, and youth leadership. They're no longer part of the plan, one official said, and that was intentional. As one commentator put it, William didn't push them out. They walked away. But now the door they thought they could walk back through has closed, and they're watching someone else lead from the center. Catherine's rise, the Queen without a crown. April 14th, 2026, during the Commonwealth Youth Forum, all eyes turned to the woman standing confidently at the front of the room, Princess Catherine. She wasn't wearing a tiara or royal sash. There were no trumpets, but something deeper was happening. She was co-chairing the event beside Princess Anne, and every delegate present could feel the authority she carried. Catherine began the session not with grand speeches, but with quiet presence. She listened, she asked questions, she engaged. A delegate from Kenya later said, "It didn't feel like we were speaking to royalty. It felt like we were speaking to someone who genuinely cared." That authenticity is what set the tone for what many called the silent crowning. One moment stood out above the rest. As the meeting ended, Princess Anne was seen whispering to an aide, "She's restoring what was nearly lost." That single quote became the headline in multiple outlets the next day. The crowd leaned in when Catherine spoke. She didn't dominate the stage, she earned it. Her eye contact, calm tone, and willingness to pause and absorb feedback showed not just polish, but poise. What made the moment even more powerful was her final gesture. As she left the platform, Catherine offered a respectful bow to Princess Anne, a nod to both tradition and unity. The entire room stood in applause, not because she asked for it, but because she'd already won their respect. She didn't declare herself queen, a reporter from The Times wrote. The room did it for her. It's no longer about who wears the crown. It's about who carries the weight, and Catherine is doing it without ever needing to say it out loud. King Charles steps back, a monarch's quiet exit. There was no dramatic abdication, no emergency press conference. But behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace, a quiet shift was unfolding. King Charles, who once stood front and center, began stepping aside, not as a retreat, but as a transition in trust. Insiders revealed that Charles has been under increased medical supervision in recent months. He remains sovereign in title, but day-to-day responsibilities are now largely in the hands of Prince William. The iconic red box, which contains the government's state documents, is now delivered to William's private office instead of the King's. The handoff was confirmed subtly when Princess Anne, in a private meeting with her brother, reportedly said, "You can rest. They're ready." That moment wasn't shared publicly, but sources say it was the emotional final seal that gave Charles permission to let go. This isn't a formal regency. The palace describes it as temporary co-stewardship, but officials close to the situation say it's more than that. One advisor noted, "The structure has already changed. It's permanent in everything but name." Perhaps the most telling detail is Queen Camilla's absence. In recent weeks, she has quietly withdrawn from most public engagements. No statement, no explanation, just fewer appearances. The contrast to Catherine's increasing visibility couldn't be more stark. The royal family isn't waiting for an official announcement. They're acting on reality. And that reality is that William and Catherine are now leading the monarchy. The sacred symbol. Catherine briefly wears the Queen Consort's crown. The moment wasn't televised. It wasn't meant to be seen by the public. But it happened, and once it was confirmed by a senior palace aide, it became the most talked-about royal image of the year. Inside Westminster Abbey, during a private blessing ceremony, Catherine was invited to wear the Queen Consort's crown, not in full coronation style, but in a solemn, symbolic gesture. The crown had been refitted, incorporating personal stones once owned by Queen Elizabeth II, meant to reflect service, not spectacle. The crown was carried in by Princess Anne, who placed it gently before Catherine. The room, made up of only a handful of clergy and senior royals, fell completely silent. Catherine picked it up slowly and placed it on her head, not with fanfare, but reverence. There were no photos taken inside, but one source described the moment as the confirmation of a role she was already playing. She wore it for only a few minutes during the blessing, but that was all it took. The gesture, the silence, the reverence. It was a coronation of character, not ceremony. That wasn't about status, one palace staffer said. That was about trust. Catherine then removed the crown herself, handed it back to Princess Anne, and bowed her head in quiet reflection. She walked out of the abbey without a word. A photo from outside showed her exiting the side doors, hand in hand with William, her eyes misty but steady. The public didn't need to see the crown to know it fits. Meghan's growing isolation, from star power to side notes. Back in California, far from the applause echoing through Westminster, Meghan Markle found herself slipping further from the narrative she once tried to redefine. When Meghan and Prince Harry left royal life in 2020, their vision was bold, a new kind of monarchy, media-savvy and people-focused. For a time, they owned headlines, led podcast charts, and inked multi-million-dollar deals. But now, the tone has shifted. Quietly, steadily, subtly, they've become side notes to the story of the crown's future. A palace source confirmed that Harry and Meghan were excluded from all new succession planning conversations. Their names were left out of internal documents related to global engagements, youth forums, and even future commemorative events. One staffer put it plainly, "The door hasn't just been closed, it's been sealed." At the same time, Meghan's media projects have reportedly lost momentum. Her highly anticipated podcast reboot with Lemonada Media has faced internal delays, and Netflix executives are said to be reassessing future content deals. Meanwhile, Catherine continues to host global dialogues and lead panels on early childhood development, not for entertainment, but for policy. The contrast could not be more clear. Meghan, once hailed as a disruptor of royal norms, now finds her public role quietly shrinking. In the US, audience engagement has waned. Analysts say there's a fatigue factor setting in. Viewers once captivated by royal revelations are now drawn to Catherine's grace under pressure. Social media sentiment mirrors the shift. Where Meghan once dominated discussions, Catherine and William now trend for reasons rooted in leadership, not controversy. And behind the scenes, Netflix, Spotify, and Archewell insiders are reportedly concerned about the Sussex brand's fading relevance. The most telling moment came when a royal documentary aired across the Commonwealth celebrating modern monarchy. William and Catherine were featured throughout, leading, guiding, listening. Meghan and Harry, not a single frame. They hope to redefine royalty, a media critic wrote, but it's Catherine who's doing it, without ever needing to say a word. William, a prince no more, stepping into kingship in deed, if not in title. As the monarchy enters a new chapter, it's becoming harder to call Prince William simply the heir. In everything but name, he's already stepped into the role of king. And it didn't happen through ceremony. It happened through conduct. It began quietly in early January 2026, when astrologer Debbie Frank, who once advised Princess Diana, marked the full moon on January 3rd as William's destiny point. The symbolism wasn't lost on royal watchers. From that moment, William's public engagements increased in weight. He no longer merely represented the crown, he began defining its tone. At a climate summit in Geneva, world leaders addressed him as Your Majesty out of habit. Palace aides didn't correct them. They simply noted it in the report. In private meetings, foreign dignitaries now request William and Catherine, not King Charles. The transition is silent, but complete. What makes William's evolution striking is how emotionally intelligent it has been. Born under the zodiac sign Cancer, like his mother Diana, William leads with instinct and empathy. He has chosen visibility during national crises, speaking softly but with purpose. When floods devastated Somerset, William arrived not with cameras, but with shovels. Local press called it the King's Visit, unofficial but unforgettable. At home, William has refused retreat. While Charles recovers and Camilla withdraws, William has stepped deeper into state work, policy discussions, and royal restructuring. He's now the one reviewing briefings, issuing statements, and meeting with Parliament liaisons. In effect, he's running the show. But perhaps the most powerful confirmation came in his silence. He has never once publicly claimed a role. He hasn't asked for acknowledgement. And yet, the nation has already crowned him. William's not waiting for a crown, one MP said. He's already wearing it, just not on his head. The public sees it first. God bless the new queen. It began with whispers at Windsor, but now the people are saying it out loud. God bless the new queen. These words, once reserved for tradition and titles, are now freely given to Princess Catherine. Not because she holds the role officially, but because she's already earned it emotionally. In recent months, there's been a visible shift in how the public responds to William and Catherine. At every event, from charity openings to diplomatic receptions, crowds aren't just greeting the couple. They're blessing them, not out of protocol, but out of recognition. During a walkabout in Yorkshire, a man in the crowd raised his voice, "God bless the new queen." Catherine turned, smiled gently, and replied, "God bless the king." The crowd applauded, not out of obligation, but because it felt real. That clip went viral within minutes. Signs now appear at every appearance. "Our Queen Catherine, the people's queen. The future is here." These aren't PR slogans. They're spontaneous expressions of affection. Polls reflect the same energy. In a recent YouGov poll, 78% of British citizens said they view William and Catherine as the true face of the monarchy. Approval ratings are higher than any royal couple since Elizabeth and Philip in the 1950s. Even traditionally critical media outlets like The Guardian and The Independent have shifted tone. Recent headlines read, "They're already leading. Why Catherine commands a crown without wearing one." William's quiet revolution. Inside the palace, staff say the public's reaction is influencing long-term planning. Official titles may not change soon, but operational power already has. Royal protection details, scheduling authority, and funding allocations now route directly through William and Catherine's office. "We don't need an official coronation to know who's in charge," said one royal household staffer. "The public already sees it, and so do we." Behind palace walls, the silent restructuring of power. While the public praised William and Catherine from the outside, a quieter and arguably more lasting transformation was taking place inside the royal institution itself. There were no statements, no press briefings. But within the walls of Buckingham Palace in Kensington, the old system was being carefully, deliberately restructured. It began with internal staffing changes. Senior aides, who once reported directly to King Charles, were reassigned, subtly but permanently, to Kensington Palace, which now functions as the de facto command center of the monarchy. From communications to scheduling, the gravity of royal operations has shifted. "It's not ceremonial, it's structural," one palace staffer confirmed. "The paperwork still says Prince of Wales, but the decisions are flowing through William and Catherine." The most telling adjustment? The daily state briefings, once delivered to Charles via his private secretary, are now being coordinated with William's office. Insiders say it's no longer a handoff, it's a rerouting. Royal communications channels were also quietly realigned. Official social media, once balanced across multiple households, now leans heavily into highlighting William and Catherine's engagements. Their work is presented not as support roles, but as central leadership.
One diplomatic source noted, "The embassies have started treating them as the power couple in charge, not future leaders, current figureheads."
Then came the shift in palace hierarchy. Princess Anne's recent appearances alongside Catherine were not symbolic. As the monarchy's most senior working royal, Anne's public alignment with Catherine signaled institutional blessing. A quiet endorsement, but a powerful one. "Anne's never wasted time on pageantry," said one royal historian. "When she stands beside you, she's telling the institution, 'This is who we follow now.'" This restructuring wasn't about removing Charles, it was about protecting the future and acknowledging who was ready to carry it. Even Queen Camilla's diminishing presence added to the transition's clarity. The vacuum left by her absence was not filled by waiting. It was filled by working. And the work hasn't gone unnoticed. From climate diplomacy to mental health advocacy, William and Catherine's calendar is packed not with royal duties for show, but with responsibilities that shape the monarchy's global relevance. As one former palace advisor put it, "The titles haven't changed, but the power has. And in the monarchy, that's all that really matters." Transition, and where one queen quietly steps away, another fully steps in. Camilla's vanishing act versus Catherine's steady reign. As Catherine continues her rise with strength and consistency, the contrast becomes unavoidable. Queen Camilla is no longer visible, not in the way she once was, and certainly not with the weight she once carried. Camilla's calendar, once full of solo engagements, high-profile patron visits, and diplomatic dinners, has shrunk. In recent months, she's been absent from major appearances, no longer accompanying King Charles to high-level briefings, no longer representing the crown abroad. And she hasn't been seen alongside Catherine since early February. There has been no scandal, no official statement, only a steady reduction of presence. The palace calls it a period of rest, but insiders say it's something more. A quiet retirement in everything but name. Meanwhile, Catherine hasn't asked for the spotlight, but it finds her. While Camilla retreats, Catherine leads. She steps into policy summits, state visits, and royal commemorations not with flash, but with purpose. Every speech is measured, every appearance intentional. "She does the job without performing it," said a former royal aide. "That's what makes her unstoppable." Public perception reflects the shift. Polls show overwhelming approval for Catherine's role, with many respondents already referring to her as our queen. Camilla, by contrast, has faded from the conversation. She isn't disrespected, she's simply no longer central. At a recent engagement in Manchester, an elderly woman handed Catherine a handwritten note. "Thank you for being our hope. You make us proud." Catherine read it quietly, folded it, and nodded. No cameras needed to catch the emotion. Where Camilla once represented the continuation of Charles's personal journey, Catherine now embodies the renewal of the monarchy's public promise. What we witnessed wasn't a formal coronation, but something more powerful: public recognition. In one unspoken moment, William and Catherine became the emotional core of the monarchy. No gold, no trumpets, just leadership that felt real. And for Harry and Meghan, watching from afar, the shift was impossible to ignore. The titles they once hoped to redefine now belong, by presence and by trust, to someone else. As Catherine quietly leads and William commands with calm authority, the crown's future is unfolding, without fanfare, but with full public backing. Meghan and Harry's distance, both emotional and physical, has become more than symbolic. It's definitive. This moment marks a turning point, not just in duty, but in who the people choose to follow. And they've chosen. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more royal revelations, because the story is only just beginning.